Welcome to the premiere episode of Alchemical Journey TV, the only show that debuts the transformational journey of real alchemists in the modern day. Today we are joining Phoenix Aurelius in Tarapoto, Peru. Phoenix, how is it going down in Peru?
Hey, Michael. Thank you for that. Things are going really great, actually. This has been an absolutely wonderful journey. I've been here for about 8 days now. And there's some pretty amazing things going on here. So it's been pretty good.
Hey, well, I've had some questions coming in on the socials. People are not quite clear what the difference between Alchemical Journey TV is and Alchemy TV. Can you give us kind of a summary of how that all is set up?
Oh yeah, absolutely, man, absolutely. In fact, I think I want to take responsibility for some of that confusion because I planned on coming out to Tarapoto and having complete American-based like bandwidth and Wi-Fi. When they said that they definitely had internet out here, I was thinking that they had internet like in the States, and that is not the case. So during the time that I've been out here up until yesterday afternoon, we didn't have high-speed internet or any of those things, so it was very difficult to actually do the advertising necessary that I wanted to do. But luckily, we're stabilized now. We do have business class bandwidth, and so let me go ahead and explain. Alchemy TV, both Alchemy TV and Alchemical Journey TV are part of the Alchemiculture umbrella. Alchemy TV focuses more on interviews and exclusive updates and debuts from people and businesses all across the alchemical spectrum. As many people know, with Alchemiculture, what we're trying to do, and with Alchemy TV especially, what we're trying to do is to bridge the connection between alchemists worldwide and to help businesses and kind of create the sense of collaboration and cooperation amongst alchemists, celebrating the unique differences behind every tradition and every practitioner. Alchemical Journey, on the other hand, is a little bit more personal, and that follows myself and, of course, you, Michael, and a couple of our other close colleagues as we go to all of these different locations in the United States and all across the world, and we debut not only our own transformational journey, but the specific laboratory work that we're going to those places to perform. So that is more what Alchemical Journey is, and I hope that kind of clears it up for viewers.
So Alchemical Journey is the travels, the projects. It's more of a reality TV show, including us and our friends, where Alchemy TV really is getting in the minds of other alchemists and other projects that are outside of us. Is that a good way to put it?
Yes, I think that is a perfect way of putting it, Michael. Yes. Okay,
good. So tell me tell me about where you're staying. You're saying it's Tarapoto. So tell me a little bit about where that's at and what it's like, and you know, the food. I know you've had some interesting journeys with the food. I'd like to hear about all that. And the plants. I know the plants are different.
Yeah, absolutely. So Tarapoto is about an hour northeast of Lima by plane. And you fly over the Andes Mountains to get here, and you get into the high jungle, or selva bajo. And basically, we have mountains all the way around us. So this is kind of like a cloud-sitting jungle. We're in a major valley, just like we are back home, Michael. In Utah, there's mountains to the east, and the sun rises over the mountains in the east, and I get to look at that exact same thing here every single morning. So it's an absolutely beautiful place, Tarapoto. It's one of the most thriving commercial hubs in all of Peru, and I found it to be one of the most beautiful places I have ever visited in my life. So we are about 15 minutes away from the Tarapoto airport, which is really just a landing strip. When you first land, according to American standards, it can be very kind of like third world-ish. And the very first night that I pulled in, I saw this little girl like asleep sitting on the speedometer of the motorcycle that her mom was driving on down the street. And you see buildings that are very shantily built and different kinds of things like that. But when you go and you actually visit the town and get to talk with the people, it's extremely friendly here. And even though the culture is extremely homogenous, I mean, I think I've seen maybe 6 other white people during the time that I've been here. Everybody is really, really friendly, and they don't treat you any differently. Now, having said that, very few people here speak English. So there's a big center of tourism here because there's some really cool things. There's like a castle at Lamas, which we should be visiting this weekend. I'll be uploading some footage of that. There's a great lagoon here called Laguna Atul, and that is a fantastic place to swim and to just see amazing, just the most blue water that you could ever possibly imagine for like a lagoon out here in this mountainous region of the Amazon. They also have tons of amazing waterfalls. There's these waterfalls that they call Cataratas de Agua Chico, and those are just absolutely stunning and beautiful. I've seen pictures of them. I haven't seen them live. We should be going to visit some of these sites this weekend. So Tarapoto is a very great place to visit, and I have just absolutely loved it here. In fact, right before I got on this call, myself and Noriana went out, and we actually went to Heladeria. It's like an ice cream shop, and their ice cream here is amazing. The fruits are amazing. Michael, let me tell you, so here in Peru, the national currency is called a nuevo sol, and it means a new sun, technically, is what the name of the currency is. It's very cool. And it's roughly about 2.8 sol to $1. And so the exchange rate is really good. And when you come out here, everything is very, very tropical, and there's about 80% humidity all year long, and it doesn't really fluctuate in temperature very much. It stays between about 82 to 89 degrees in the jungle areas, and then it can get a little bit hotter in the city because of all of the concrete, the pavement, and things like that. But as a result, there are tons and tons and tons of tropical fruits. So we went to the market, the local market, which is called the Huequito, which means like, it's like the little hole is literally what it means. And in the market, there are all of these people that sell produce, but they only do it on miércoles and sábado, on Wednesdays and Saturdays. And so like today was Wednesday, of course, and I went to the market myself. Noriana was feeling a little tired, so she stayed behind. And I picked up star fruit, coconut, chirimoyas. There's these things that are relatives of passion fruit here too, Michael. They're called granadillas. And there's another fruit that they call a maracuya. And maracujas are a little bit acidico. They're a little bit sour. And they have just this amazing taste, but they still have like the seeds and the flesh, just like a passion fruit does. But they're like orange and yellow, and they're really tasty, and they've been some of my favorites. I've been putting them in my smoothies every day. Let's see, what other kinds of tropical fruit I just went today. Oh, have you ever had, Michael, have you ever had what they call an apple banana?
No, but I saw Noriana's video where she was showing those.
Yeah, totally. So an apple banana, or a banana manzanita, is it's like a tiny little super flavorful banana that has the flavor of a banana, but it has like this little hint of apple. And I've really become a fan of those. I've been drinking smoothies. I've been almost 100% raw, with the exception of some ravioli last night. So I've lost a lot of weight just since the time that I've been down here. I've dropped 2 pant sizes. I was about a 36, and now I'm fitting into my size 32 clothes. So I anticipated for that, and I brought those with me. But yeah, it's great. And then of course there's all sorts of other tropical fruits and produce and things like that here. So and of course too, there's all sorts of really great foliage. These are hojas de coca, or coca leaves, and this is one of the most important plants that I have actually come across. So back home in the States before I left, it was no secret that I was a big fan of Our Lady of Saturn, of the ganja plant. And when I came out here, I had made an intention to just be able to move away from that. And just like many people who move away from that particular plant and its intelligence, there tends to be a little bit of anxiety or a little bit of harshness, a few days of adaptation. Usually for me, my own body chemistry, like 3 or 4 days of adaptation where you feel a little bit more on edge or just maybe a little bit more stressed because your dopamine levels are trying to regulate again. It does the same thing when you try and smoke cigarettes and then you just stop cold turkey. But because I couldn't bring any with me and because I wanted to have ayahuasca journeys during the time that I'm out here, it suggested that you don't ingest any marijuana. And so I took this as the opportunity to just kind of flush my body out of it once and for all and to redevelop a much healthier relationship with it. And so when I first landed, in the airport, they have a tea of the coca leaf that you can purchase that's very inexpensive. And of course, if you're going to be flying over the Andes on the airplanes, they offer it to you as well. And it's called mate de coca, which is kind of like yerba mate, but they call it mate de coca. And the coca plant has tons of tremendously beneficial alkaloids that increase oxygen absorption in the body. It really helps with the heart space energy and opening it up. They say, technically the word is estimulante, so they would call it a stimulant, but it's not a stimulant in the way that like caffeine or taurine or any of these really harsh stimulants that are well known in the United States are. And it has. What did you say, Michael?
Oh, sorry. I was just saying it's not like a respiratory stimulant where your heart's going to race.
Yeah, exactly. So it's, you know, when I first had it, I had a friend who brought some coca cookies back from Machu Picchu for me a few years ago, and those were cool because they make it out of harina de coca or coca flour, and then you bake them into these little cookies with miel or with honey. And when you eat them, if you eat enough of them, your mouth kind of begins to tingle a little bit around your gums, and then you just feel really good and calm. But it's not like a stimulant the way that you think about it. So I had some familiarity with coca, but I never had mate de coca, and I certainly never chewed any of the fresh leaves. Now, these are leaves straight off of the tree that I picked right before this call. We have tons and tons and tons of coca leaves that grow around here, and in fact, Tarapoto, for whatever reason, is still considered a red zone in Peru, which is like a danger zone because in the late 1980s and 1990s, there were guerrilla soldiers who were heavily farming the coca and creating cocaine and things like that. They've since been pushed out and moved completely out, but that was here for a long time. And so at any rate, when I got here, one of the very first things that I turned to was this hoja de coca, and treating it with a lot of reverence and respect, I started taking 2 leaves at a time, just like this, and rolling them up just like this. So you kind of get that little thing, and then you just fold them into like a little cigarrillo, like a little cigarette kind of looking thing, or like a little quid, like that, and you set it down inside of your gum, and you just kind of chew on it. And it is probably, Michael, in my opinion, it is the most healing plant in the world in terms of its heart space energy, in terms of being able to create a heavier oxygen level in the body, and as a result, being able to think clearer. And energetically, for me and for a lot of the other individuals that I've spoken with, there's this huge heart chakra opening energy. So just like many consciousness expanding materials that don't have any sort of actual drug-like effect, coca is heavily repressed, obviously, in the United States. I believe it's a Schedule I substance, and it's very heavily put down just because of the possibility of creating cocaine. But I would tell you that if people had access to the coca plant, there would be no desire for cocaine, because the alkaloids, when they're in their natural potency like this, are so therapeutic on a multitude of levels. So, like I was mentioning, when I quit marijuana, and coming here, I turned to the coca to help with what just trying to stay on top of it so that I didn't get anxiety or any of these things. And instead of having the sensation like I was replacing one plant with another, the coca really helped to just create this naturally stimulating, beautiful sense of life all day long. And my lungs have completely increased. Before, I would cough every so often. I'd have a little bit of mucousy discharge. Obviously, that's going to happen anytime you smoke things. And during the time that I've been here, as a result of the humidity, as a result of the increased oxygen absorption and the use of the coca, my lungs feel absolutely healed. I mean, completely healed. And I have absolutely no desire whatsoever to smoke marijuana ever again in my life, to be perfectly honest with you, Michael. Like this plant, and I've even stopped using the coca on a daily basis. So, you know, it's been a really beautiful thing, and just kind of helped me adjust to the way that people live here. It's very laid back too here. It's very laid back. Like, for instance, yesterday it was raining, and so nobody went into work really. And why? Because they don't need to. They didn't want to. And a few places like banks or like a couple of major commercial operations were open, but aside from that, a lot of people take the day off and they just decide that they're going to do what they need to do. And also, everything closes from 1 to 3 in the afternoon here. There's hardly anything open. There's a few restaurants that are open, but nothing other than that. And it's just kind of the pace of life. So yeah, it's been very cool. Yeah, it's a whole different ballgame here.
Hey, so what brought you down to the Amazon in the first place? I mean, I know that you're teaching down there. I know you're teaching some lab work, and you're also teaching some alchemical theory as well. And what brought you there? Before you get into what you're teaching and who you're teaching, tell me what brought this about. I mean, how did you get the opportunity?
Cool. Yeah, thank you for asking that. Back in September of last year, I received a random email saying that that there was an Amazonian herbal company who was interested in hiring me to come down and teach them the practical art of spagyrics. And it's been something that the founder of Qori Inti Herbals, it's spelled Qori, Inti is spelled I-N-T-I, Qori Inti, Amazonian Herbals. The founder's name is Aubrey Bomdud, and she wrote me this email and said that, hey, I've been really called to spagyrics for quite a while now, and I feel that this is the time that I really want to get going on it. And so, you know, after months of communication, finally we decided that the very best use of her time and of my time would be a 40-day apprenticeship, a traditional 40-day apprenticeship, which is the way that I like to teach anyway. I don't think that you can do hardly anything in a weekend. You can maybe discuss the practical aspects maybe and a little bit of the theory in a weekend, or even in a week, or even in 2 weeks, but you don't have time to really go through and see the processes from beginning to end. You don't have time to work with everything in just, you know, a short period of time. So personally, when I go and I do apprenticeships or major retreats or whatever, I like to go and I like to fly and I like to stay there for 40 days and teach people everything that they need. Now, luckily, it was much cheaper for Aubrey than it was for most people, because she already has a laboratory and she's already been distilling essential oils and hydrosols and already knows about fermentation and tincturing, and she has a whole line of these things on qoriinti.com. So she's very familiar already with these things, and she's also an Ayurvedic practitioner. So he's very familiar with, I told her in all of my messages, you're familiar with 2/3 of what it is that I can teach you. However, it's the third that's left that will change your paradigm about the way that you look at things and how you work in the laboratory. And so far, that's definitely been the case. Her mind has been blown. So I got invited to come out and teach for 40 days out here, and we're 8 days into the journey right now. And that's how I came out. Wow,
that's awesome, man. That sounds like quite the well, I don't want to say luck, but that really sounds like an awesome opportunity that came your way. So what kind of lab work have you done since you got there?
Oh, Jesus, man, it's been so busy. So like I said, we got in about 8 days ago, And we took the first 2 days off to just kind of settle in and get acclimatized and learn where the markets are and how to get around. And out here they have these things called motocarros, and it's like a trimobiles. It's like a tricycle kind of. They convert these motorbikes into like little rickshaws that can seat 2 or 3 people, and they have a little space to like carry luggage or like big boxes or whatever in the back as well. And everybody gets around on those. So the first 2 or 3 days, the first 2 days, we spent on doing that, and then we spent. So that was Monday and Tuesday, and then Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, we busted out all of the theory and got through all of the stuff that you really need to know about alchemy. You have to understand, you know, the concepts of the prima materia. You have to understand how that separates into this bipolar nature of celestial salt and celestial niter, and how each of those have a bipolar nature that represent themselves archetypally as the elements of fire, air, water, and earth, respectively, from most dynamic to most passive, and how the combinations of each of those elements, the way that we see it directly behind the physical appearance of things, breaks down into sulfur, mercury, and salt, archetypal sulfur, mercury, and salt, or the soul, the spirit, and the body of the material. And so being able to explain that and work with that and play around with that in a practical environment, and explaining the difference between the alchemy that I am so avid about teaching, the form of alchemy that I'm so avid about teaching, which is truly working philosophically. Whether I'm teaching somebody spagyrics or actual lab alchemy, it doesn't matter. If you show them how to distill something and the material is boiling, it's dead, it's inert. Spagyrically, it might have some value, but alchemically, it's dead. It's not going to be nearly as potent. And so, you know, explaining philosophic principles and how to work with each individual process of alchemy, you know, starting with calcination and incineration, dissolution, digestion, imbibition, cohobations, all of the different archetypal processes that we use in alchemy, sublimation, and showing how to work with it philosophically so that our materials stay alive. So the first 3 days were just spent on that, and all of these videos that I'm filming for Aubrey for her posterity are going to be available in our membership section here in about a month. When I get back to the States, I can upload it. So everybody will get the exact same education that I'm giving to Aubrey if you want to join our Alchemical membership site when we get it up here in about a month.
Awesome.
So, yeah, I think so too. It's going to be very, very, very valuable information for members who want to get a hold of that. So since then, the first place that I start, and this is kind of based on the golden chain of Homer, of course, is working with the waterworks. In my own personal opinion, you know, of course, 2 of about the 10 years that I've been practicing alchemy were spent exclusively just on focusing on water and working with the archeus of water and different fermentations and adding back different fractions of water and trying to incubate and gestate various forms of life, mineral, botanical, animal, so on and so forth. And those who've talked with me about it know that I have a great deal to say about the waterworks and how important it is. And so this week has been dedicated exclusively to working with that. So the very first thing that we have to start with to teach people the basics of alchemy is calcination, because really your calcination and your leaching work are going to follow you throughout everything you do in alchemy. And again, when you start on the path, I suggest that you start with water, because there are abundant different sources that you can get that are easy to work with, and they're very safe to work with, but they are very profound, and they teach you the skill sets, and they teach you the medicinal value of philosophic distillations. If you distill water at a point where it's boiling, it becomes dead, and your archeus will have virtually no medicinal effect in my experience, at any rate. I don't want to invalidate anybody else's experience, but in my experience, the moment that something boils, it exhales its life force, and it's no longer philosophically alive. And keeping everything at a below boiling temperature to just slowly sweat over, it takes a very long time, but it also creates philosophically alive materials. And so They have a spring on the property. Agua de manantial is what we call it in Spanish. It's a cold water, fresh spring, a fresh cold water spring. And so we started with a lot of that work. The very first thing that we had to do was we had to distill water in order to crystallize our salts, and we had to calcine the salt of tartar. And so we've calcined the salt of tartar, we dissolved some of the salts, we got those crystallizing, they were able to see this whole leaching process, and we're 48 hours now into just the crystallization. And again, this isn't just getting your salts, this isn't dissolving your ash or your salts into water and then letting it evaporate at a very high temperature. This is letting it slowly, slowly, slowly evaporate and to actually crystallize so that you revivify the mineral body of the material. And so once we were able to get some of our salts that were actually crystallized, we calcined those, and we've been collecting the oil of tartar. And very first batch of the oil of tartar that we collected, we put that in the retort and distilled that out, and so we made angel water. And by the way, it's so easy to deliquesce here, Michael. So the very last week before I left, I spent all week in the lab and all weekend in the lab. And of course, we had the solar eclipse, the full moon, and that blood red moon. And I spent, and there were clouds in the sky even, there was so many ideal conditions. And I still could not get any of my deliquescence to really happen in Utah. Leaving it outside about 1.5 feet off the ground so that all of the low-lying moisture could condense. It's just a travesty trying to do that in Utah, actually, compared to out here at any rate. I mean, it can be done, and of course, out of necessity, I've had to do it for years, but it limits the quantity of ENS tinctures and things like that I can work with. So the very first night, I come out here, I'm calcining and preparing stuff on a Sunday. You know, we don't work on weekends, but I was still in the lab because, hell, that's what I do. That's what I like to do. So I was in the lab making the oil of tartar just to see about how long it would take. I come back the next morning and I have a whole dish full, you know. So I had like, just off of this tiny little sprinkle of the oil of tartar, I got about 15 mils of, or the salt of tartar, I got about 15 mils of the oil of tartar out of that the next morning. And I distilled all of that into angel water, very first thing, just boom. And of course, for those of you who don't know, angel water is important because it's able to bring things philosophically back to life. You want to add it to distilled water when you're crystallizing your salts so that your salts can actually revivify and crystallize better. You can add it to tinctures to add potency to it. You can do, I mean, there's a million different things that you can do, but the reason that we call angel water is because it's able to revivify what it's added to. And so it's tremendously valuable to alchemists and tremendously valuable in our work. And so we got that going on. And then yesterday we collected about maybe 6 or 7 gallons of jungle thunderstorm rainwater, and we'll be fermenting some of that. And you know, in the meantime, while that's fermenting, because that takes about a year, out here it'll probably take less, but the longer that you leave water to ferment, actually the better it is. It's just like a tincture or anything else in alchemy. The longer it's sitting there and macerating and fermenting and undergoing its procedure, the more potent it gets. And so and obviously the more universal gur that it will produce as well. So I'm teaching them the procedure for making an archeus of water, and we're doing that from the spring water out here because I'm teaching them the procedure. And we've done the philosophical distillations, the first elemental fractional distillations. To make an archeus of water, you have to do what's known as a 4x3 distillation. The very first distillation, you break it off into 4 elements of fire fraction, air fraction, water fraction, and earth fraction of water. And if you're doing this with a fermented water, then left over in your boiling flask, you'll keep a little bit of that water, and you'll have the universal gur, which is the universal seed of life. And I've been putting together a program for a couple of years to bring this into schools to kind of show how evolution works on an actual scale, how you can take this universal seed of life and add it back to various fractions of water and watch as various forms of life in various kingdoms actually begin to evolve out of nothing other, apparently, than the seed of life, light, and water itself. various forms of distilled water.
Fascinating topic. One of the most fascinating topics that I've come across in alchemy so far is the idea that working with water can actually create its own little ecological life forms, and depending on how you put it together, it's you don't even know what you're going to get necessarily.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, yeah, I can only imagine what the very first alchemists who figured out these the elemental fractions and breaking all of this down, how they really figured that out and started playing with it. But I mean, it's very, very valid, and anybody who puts any sort of amount of time into it and seeks it out earnestly and honestly and truly works philosophically. That's the thing about water. You have to work philosophically with it. Otherwise, you won't get the results that that you otherwise could. And so I think that it is, hands down, the most fascinating, and as a result, I also feel that it's the crux of all further alchemical work. So, you know, the astrology actually didn't line up to do a distillation of these things, but again, you know, here's what I like to say. If you're working philosophically, you must observe the astrological cycles, specifically in the way that Tim Wilkerson teaches, and that's just in the lineage of Frater Albertus, and that's a very common form of alchemy astrology, and in fact, in my opinion, that is the most viable form of alchemy astrology in the modern age to abide by. And you have to follow the astrology if you're going to work philosophically, but having said that, within 40 days, I can't plan everything philosophically. All of our fermentations and our rectifications and all of the things in the herbal kingdom, those are definitely lining up. Our distillation of the Aqueous, unfortunately, was not able to do that. So we've already distilled out our first elemental fractions, and then we took the fire fraction, we distilled that into its 3 fractions of the sulfur of fire of water, the mercury of fire of water, and the salt of fire of water. And let's see, we started at roughly 10 o'clock yesterday, and we finished roughly at about 5 o'clock today doing all of those in the amount of 125 liters, or 125 milliliters, sorry, pardon me. So we're talking a very, very long time, over 28, over 30 hours to finish just 125 milliliter rectification of our fire fraction. And it would have gone a little bit faster had the astrology had a little bit more fire and water inside of it, because that's much more conducive to distillation. And also ambient environmental kind of stuff affected that too. Yesterday it was raining. Obviously distillations will work a whole lot better when the skies are clear. So yeah, at any rate. Let's see. So aside from that, we also started planning for our first fermentation, so that those will be done in about 10 days. The ambient temperature here is the temperature that things should ferment at, so we don't really need to incubate at anything. It never gets below about 80 degrees Fahrenheit at night here, and during the day it never gets above 90, really. And so we're perfectly within the realm of just letting these things at ambient temperature ferment. And we're going to be working with a couple of cool things tomorrow and Friday. We're going to try coca 2 different ways. So according to pharmacological methods of producing fermentable musts and wines, one of the very first things that you do is you create a very strong infusion or a decoction if you're working with roots and barks of the material, and then you concentrate it down to 1/4 the amount of fluid to make that concentrate. And so it's this very, very, very concentrated liquid. And then, of course, you add fresh foliage to it, and then you add your yeast and any sugars if you're going to do that. And of course, we're going to do that because we want to try and get the maximum alcohol possible out of these particular ones. For those of you who are interested at home, by the way, the yeast that we use is an undetermined yeast. It's common throughout the entire vegetable kingdom. It's also what Rubophyllus solfluaris suggests, which is Saccharomyces cerevisiae. And the sugar that we're using is going to be completely raw, unprocessed cane sugar. The reason being is because that's what they have available to them out here in Tarapoto. There's a ton of cane sugar growing, and that's what we have available, and so that's what we're going to use. Traditionally, I like to use crystalline glucose. I know a lot of people use crystalline fructose. Here's the difference in my opinion. This is just my opinion. I don't know that there's a right way over this, but crystalline fructose can be taken from a wide variety of sources, both vegetable as well as fruit sources. The grape, the red grape in particular, is moving the coca to the other side of my mouth. The red grape in particular in alchemy has obviously been considered to be the most perfect fruit and the most like the sun because it has the smallest dermal layer, the smallest, thinnest skin, just like the sun, and it's completely full of life force. So as you squeeze it out, it's like 90% juice, and then it also has a seed inside of it. And we know that the sun must have a seed because that's what creates fire. The seed of the sun is fire, is what the Emerald Tablet tells us. Its father is the sun. And so it's the most like the sun, and the grape contains much more glucose than what it contains fructose. And so when I ferment just completely undetermined alcohol at home, I use technically three ingredients. I use distilled water that I have philosophically distilled myself with 3 drops of angel water per liter. I use the Saccharomyces cerevisiae yeast, and then I use crystalline glucose. And those 3 things will just make a very clean, completely undetermined alcohol that we can use in the vegetable kingdom, and it's much, much cheaper than fermenting your own wine. And for a lot of my purposes, I almost always rectify my alcohol up to 100% in, off of the salt of tartar anyway. And so it gets undetermined by the time I'm done with it, and I just prefer to work that way. So at home, I work with crystalline glucose. Out here, they don't have crystalline glucose, so we work with what we have.
Right.
But we'll be fermenting coca through that first pharmacological method, and then we'll also be doing traditional spagyrics with it, which is just water, the herb that we tear up by hand into tiny pieces, fresh. We grab it straight off the plant, toss this in, pour our water over it, put our yeast, our sugar in, ferment lock.
Right.
So we'll be doing those 2 different forms of coca. Coca, by the way, in my experience, is a mercurial herb. But it has 2 different intelligences, and this is very traditional. Some individuals say that Mercury and Jupiter plants can actually kind of be used interchangeably, and depending on what source you look at through Materia Medica texts in the past, you can see that Mercury either corresponds to the liver and Jupiter to the lungs, or vice versa. And I noticed that the coca plant also displays these properties, which has really got me thinking about a few things. If you drink a lot of the mate de coca, like the coca tea, it definitely has this flushing effect on the liver, and you excrete a lot more bile, and your bowel movements don't stay very, very solid, and that's a result of the overactivity of the bile and the overactivity of the enzymes in the liver. So I have noticed that aspect of it, and it seems to primarily be its water-soluble aspects work that way. On the other hand, its alcohol-soluble aspects and saliva degradation seems to make it much more effective in working on the lungs, working on the heart, the respiratory tract, things like that. And so it's a very, very brilliant mercurial quality to it. We've also found a local variety of basil around, and it's actually a form of holy basil. It smells a lot. Yeah, it's a wild Amazonian form of holy basil, Michael. It's really amazing.
I'd love some of that. You should bring some home if you can.
I will. I plan on bringing as much of this biodiversity home as possible. The airports give me a lot of crap for it, but I'm going to try it anyway.
Yeah. Okay, okay, go ahead.
Oh yeah, and let's see, we're also playing with some very traditional Amazonian herbs like uña de gato, cat's claw, palo santo, clavahuasca, ayahuasca vine, chaliponga. So we have like some traditional macerated tinctures of these things that we'll be working with. A lot of them will be fermenting. Some of them will be performing essential oil distillations of. Some of them will be performing through ENS methods. So, I mean, basically, I'm just giving them the entire spectrum of everything that there is to know inside of Spagyria proper during the time that I'm out here and working with all of the native foliage and just everything that we can get. But tomorrow, all of you guys will be able to join me as we make aqueous essences from flowers. And now aqueous essences, that might be a term that I made up. I don't know if other people call it that or even if they practice this very often, but it's a form of making an essence using just water alone. And you usually make it either with flowers or with fresh leaves or foliage. And you put it all into your retort and you add distilled water over the top and add a few drops of angel water to revivify it, of course. And then you distill out the essence of the flower into a receiving flask, and the flower stays in the retort, and you keep the heat on for a little bit and gently dry it out. And then once that herb is now dry, because you started with fresh material, so once the herb is all dry and its own moisture has been distilled out of it, then you scrape the flower or the herb out and you grind it in a mortar and pestle. You don't actually calcine it at this point. You just grind it in a mortar and pestle so it's like a dried herb, and then you add it back to the retort, and then you cohabate. So you pour your distillate back in over the top of that powdered herb, and you distill it again. And you do this 7 times, and at the final time, you have this very, very potent, astrally effective. It works on this the Kabbalistic world of Asaya and Yetzirah. So it works, elementally on the earth and the water levels, or on the physiological and the astral level is another way of saying that. And they're very, very potent initiatics, in my experience, on the astral level, because they teach you what it is that the astral intelligence of that plant or flower has to offer. And, by the time you're done with that distillate, you actually calcine the biomass and you add the completely leached and purified salts back to it. And just like in essence in the vegetable kingdom, when we're working with alcohols and vegetable mercury, this actually gains vintage quality. It gets stronger, more potent, or it changes characteristics as it gets older. You just have to keep it in a nice dark glass bottle and keep it away from the light. But it is probably one of the best things, in my opinion, to help activate initiations during the dream space. So tomorrow we'll be making that, and I have this really beautiful flower here. I just picked this right before coming out, and I think that I'll probably work with this, and then there's also a couple of different flowers that I don't know what they're called, but I feel very called to work with them. They're like these tiny little purple and white flowers, and I get the feeling that they're psychotropic in some way. I'm going to have to ask somebody what they are. But I plan on working with those tomorrow, if at all possible. And aside from that, we have
time for those who are going to see this before the live episode tomorrow. What time and what's the date and time that this is going to go on?
Roughly about 1 o'clock Central Time tomorrow. So about noonish, I think, Mountain Time. So
we'll put it out on our socials. So if you want to check that out, just keep an eye out, and we'll post it.
Absolutely, absolutely. Of course, the internet, there's a couple of different factors inside of there that might play into that, but by the end of this evening we'll have a definitive time that will be posted out on the socials. So yeah, thank you for saying that, Michael. So yeah, that's what we're going to do tomorrow, and starting some of the fermentations and choosing a lot of the things that we want to work with. And I'll cut this out in a minute, and we can move on. But I just want to say that working with an established Amazonian herbal company is so amazing, because I walked in and they literally have an entire almacen, or an entire closet already full of tinctures that have been macerating, and they use 96% alcohol that originated from spirits. And so, man, we're talking like coca, clavohuasca, like this specific kind of like healing holy garlic that they have here, like the local form of holy basil, like all these different things They already exist. The tinctures are already there, and so we can play around with spagyric tinctures, a simple spagyric tincture, very quickly. And of course, people who know me know that I don't speak highly of simple spagyric tinctures. I don't think that they're very effective, and that the fixed sulfur has far too much of an effect on holding back the actual consciousness of the plant in a lot of ways, unless you purify it. There's a lot of tricks that we have for doing that. But yeah. I'm still going to be teaching them that. And also distilling essences from a lot of those pre-made tinctures and working with the fixed sulfurs in pretty proprietary ways. So yeah, anyway, that's what we've got going on this week and this weekend.
Cool. Well, that gives us a great insight into this upcoming Amazon series. I will encourage you guys, if you like what you hear, like the page, the video, subscribe to our channels, ask any questions, on any of the socials. I think that on the event page in YouTube is a great place to ask questions. So please do that. And I know our calendar is filling up fast. Can you give us a sneak peek on what we have to see after the Amazon? We don't need to spend too much time on that, but I'd like to see what we've got coming up in our next series. And also, for people who are asking about having their own 40-day retreat, how would they get a hold of Alchemical Journey TV to do something like that?
Yeah, thank you, Michael. So Alchemical Journey is, this Amazon is just like a good 40-day period that we're going to be here. But then we have an extra 20 days in the Pacific Northwest after this, checking out all sorts of things. So we leave here June 2nd. We arrive back in the States June 3rd. And June 6th, 7th, and 8th, I'll actually be at the Northwest Alchemy Conference in Redmond, Washington. And let me just go ahead and show everybody a little screenshot of what that looks like here. Can you see that yet, Michael?
Nope, I still see you. I think it's coming. I'll let you know. I still see you, though.
All right, perfect. So we'll be going to the Northwest Alchemy Conference on June 6th, 7th, and 8th this year. There's going to be some excellent speakers that are there and some wonderful vendors. I'll come here to the speaker page and just list a couple of names. Robert Allen Bartlett, Karen Bartlett, obviously our good friend and brother Timothy Wilkerson will be there. Steve Berkel is another Utah boy. He's not from Utah, but he lives in Utah right now. He lives in South Jordan from what I understand, so he'll be representing. And a lot actually can be owed to Steve for this year's conference. The organizers started a little bit late on the advertising this year, and Steve Berkel really helped pull up the slack and has made this particular conference possible. So I can't wait to see what he's going to be presenting on. I mean, he's got his lecture here talking about practical alchemy from secret societies, from the Golden Rosenkreuz to the Golden Dawn, and even into modern times. So I'm really honored that he'll be there and be able to see what he has to offer. Tom Waters will be there. This fellow by the name of Siegberta that we met last year. You remember him, right, Michael?
Yeah.
Yep. So Siegberta, Calvin Howard from the company Tibetan Gold will be presenting. Len Erna will be presenting again. She was absolutely fantastic last year. And such a beautiful, wonderful spiritual lady. Such an amazing, calm presence, and just everything that she does is so meaningful and done with such presence that I can't wait to engage in what she has again this year. So I'm really looking forward to that. Taylor Elwood, he's written a couple of books. One of his books is called Inner Alchemy. Even though it doesn't really have a whole lot to do with alchemy, that particular book, it does have to do with the transformation of ourselves and our bodies, and so that's great. Our very dear brother Seja Popham of Organic Unity in the School of Evolutionary Herbalism will be there, and he and I were actually talking about that today, and I think we're going to be having an episode where we're going to, with he and myself and Tim Wilkerson is at the Midwest Herb Fest. He left today, and so he's teaching alchemy there, and during the time he's there, he should have internet, and so we're going to try and get him on the line from French Lick, Indiana, where he's at Our Haven is the name of the place, and we'll get Seja joining us from Southern Washington, or rather Southern Oregon, and we'll have myself from Tarapoto, and of course you, Michael, from Utah, and we'll all be talking about the Northwest Alchemy Conference and what people can expect and things like that. Dorian Tade will also be there. He has a pretty cool little business where he makes like ormus and minerals and things. Now check this out, Michael. Angela Rydell is going to be there this year. You know who that is?
I know the name. Give me the spiel.
Well, you might be familiar with the name Dr. Rydell or Dr. Rydell.
That's what's ringing a bell, is Dr. Rydell.
Yep, that's our good old boy Frater Albertus. And his daughter, Angela, is going to be speaking what it was like growing up with Frater Albertus, and she's also going to be presenting her work on the biography that is coming up. And she's also from Utah, so there's a very huge presence from the Intermountain States this year. Aurelius Electrum, he was there last year. He's the electric researcher who has been bridging the connection between modern technology and alchemy for quite some time. And he's a traditional alchemist, and he might still run Vitriol Labs up in Canada, but he's also worked very heavily with the inclusion of a lot of alternative sciences, and so he'll be there again, and I can't wait for his presentation, which is on squaring the circle and sacred geometry of the philosopher's stone from Plato to El Nashiet. So that'll be cool. And of course, yours truly, I'll be presenting on how to practically extract the intelligence of plants and the intelligence of materials in the laboratory using various methodologies, and speaking about how we can actually combine materials together in the lab to dial in the particular frequential consciousness that is desired, not just following the standard textbook recipe. So I'll be showing more about how alchemy and how practical spagyrics is an art as well as a science, but I'll be really breaking it down on the art level, and this will be a great lecture for modern practitioners who really want to take their work to the next level and have something more to chew on. Also, Gabriel Moroney, who started the medical alchemy conferences earlier on in the 21st century, like 2008, I think, was the medical alchemy conference. At any rate, I really admire Gabriel, and I think that he is probably the world's leading expert at the time, at this particular time, on distilling essential oils from mushrooms and different kinds of things like that. So I can't wait for that. And then the entertainment this year is a Fire Eater and Walk Around Magic from Michael Hicks. So it's going to be a very amazing, jam-packed conference, and it's going to be absolutely wonderful. So I can't wait. I can't wait for more of that. Let me see. And then after that, we're going to be heading to Portland, Oregon, and we'll be visiting the Muse Mansion, Wonderland, Temple I Am, and a lot of really cool conscious projects that are going on there that maybe don't have quite so much to do with practical alchemy as much as they do with transfiguration. So we'll be talking with, hopefully, at any rate, with Elijah Parker and a fellow by the name of Dr. Phoenix, who started a company called Subliminal Phoenix. And they work with binaural beats and really amazing projected holograms and different kinds of things like this that drastically alter consciousness. I met them last year, and I've worked with their products and their materials, and I am really impressed with them. And so we'll be debuting that because, as everybody knows, there is a lot more to alchemical transformation and even lab work than just the lab work itself. And having a wide variety and a very diverse offering of things to help transform the persona and help transform the character, these things are just as crucial to the modern day alchemist as is having retorts and alembics and pelicans and the like, and knowing how to use them.
So I just want to emphasize that point. that alchemical journey is a journey, and we don't necessarily know where it's going to go and what kind of transformation it's going to lead us to, but it does go outside the lab. And so if lab work's not your thing, that doesn't mean you shouldn't keep an eye out on what's coming up, because we're going to be exploring all kinds of things. Basically, anything that suits our fancy and we think is a transformative thing.
Yes, absolutely. And the very last thing that we have on the schedule right now, which will be June 11th through, I believe, the 14th, is Surrender, the Eco-Sex Convergence. And this is going to happen in Southern Washington, Yakahuma, I can't remember the name of the city it's in. Let me go ahead and look this up here really fast. And I'll try and do a screen share here if I can. There we go. So here is the website for the Surrender Eco-Sex Convergence. Oh, June 12th through the 16th. I'll actually be arriving on the 11th, though. And Alchemiculture and Alchemical Journey TV will actually be getting exclusive, just like at the Northwest Alchemy Conference, we'll be getting exclusive interviews, exclusive content, maybe even some presentations. We'll be talking with as many people as we can about the actual experience of it. But eco-sex is, and ecosexual is a term that is very similar to like a metrosexual, or the way that it's used colloquially. Whereas metrosexuals place a whole lot of emphasis around defining themselves through their sexuality and their relationship to being like pretty and well-dressed and having all of these things that a metropolis would provide. Ecosexuality provides the opportunity for, let's go ahead and stop our screen share here, provides the opportunity for people to express themselves through their sexuality, through their awareness of the ecosystem, their awareness of nature and where they fit in. And so in this, there's going to be some of the most amazing presentations that I think I have actually ever even heard of. I mean, everything from parenting in the modern age to the abomination, or the abolition, rather, not abomination, the abolition of monogamy, things about becoming sensual animal, conscious touch and communication, tasting the magic of pollination, pollinating the heart and planting the world, radical and reverent ovulation, living with and creating sexual connection with the elementals, creating stone labyrinths, I mean, primal liberation, embodied dance. I mean, everything that you can possibly imagine is going to be present during this festival, and we have exclusive media rights. Alchemical Journey is covering this just like the Northwest Alchemy Conference and just like the Temple I Am Project. We are exclusively going there and covering these things and bringing attention to this this massively important transformational aspect of society, and we're bringing it to you because we feel that this is so important. And so we have between now and June 15th, June 16th, that is just jam-packed with information almost every single day. We're going to be trying and creating episodes as often as we possibly can and bringing this to you and showing you what we're doing, but mostly helping include you in our journeys. And we want you to feel like you are with us as I'm going around on this journey and talking with people. And that's what our social networks are for. All of the Alchemiculture social networks, we want you guys at home to be able to tell us what you want to know more about from these things. Go to these websites, check out the presenters, tell us what kinds of questions we should ask. I have a whole series of questions myself that obviously I want to know, but we also want to make this much more participatory than just like a normal TV channel. We want this to be something that you get involved in, and we want to nurture and help your alchemical journey just as much as we're nurturing and helping our own path as well. So yeah, that's that, Michael.
Perfect. That's exactly what I wanted to hear and what the people have been asking for. So I'm really looking forward to it myself. hopefully I can be there in person, but if not, I'll be here on a hangout and you know, be on the show at least, and to be able to ask you the questions. This may not be my year. I've got a lot going on the home front. But I'm excited that I can be there via our technology, and that we can see and talk about and show live. We can answer questions live. You can turn around and show me the jungle live, so I can get an idea. And then next year, maybe it'll be somebody else who will be in the States talking to me and you, of course. But I'm really excited about everything that's coming up. I'm fascinated and very intrigued with the lab work, and I've got my own projects that I'd like to, you know, talk about sometime. I'd really like to do some ends on some of the stuff. We'll talk about it another day, but I've got some fun things that I've got going on. And I really look forward to, you know, meeting more people at the Northwest Alchemy Conference, even if it's through video, you know. So I think that's great. Do you have any final words for our audience?
Yeah, I do. I just want to let everybody know some of the most exciting things that are going to be coming up on Alchemical Journey. Not only am I going to be talking with the founder of Corriente Herbals, Aubrey Bomdad, but we have a whole series of really fun things we're going to be talking about, Michael. She and I have had these conversations the last couple of days about what we call the American Avatar Syndrome, which is where all of these Americans started watching Avatar and then they thought that the native people were so enlightened and so all of these things because that was the way that it was displayed to them. And Aubrey actually lives with native people here on the land, and she hires them and they work with her and for her. And we're actually going to be going this weekend and checking out the way these people live, but they're very unconscious, very, very, very unconscious. They destroy the land. They don't eat very many fruits and vegetables. I mean, the experience of native tribalism, the way that most people in America think about it, is not at all where we want to be headed. There are aspects of this that are going to be tremendously important for us to integrate into society, but we're going to be talking about how the aspects of like this idea of American tribalism and living in tribes and like economic tribalism, all these things, that is an idea of the future, not an idea of the past or even of the present. And living from the land is much different than what you think. It is not fun. It is not tropical. It is not raw food. It is not healthy. And I'm going to be exposing that. Also, we'll be talking with my new favorite ayahuasquero, and the only person that I will actually put my stamp of approval on that I have worked with. His name is Dionysio Santos. He is one of the most amazing men that I've ever met in my life. Not only has he studied spiritual and transpersonal and practical alchemy, and he's not only learning practical operative alchemy with me now, but he's been working with ayahuasca for 20 plus years. And I mean, I'll let him tell you guys the story, but he's got a radically different approach than most people are willing to hear or understand. And again, it has nothing to do with singing Icaros over your head and using these feathers and the ceremonial pomp and this traditional turistico way of taking ayahuasca. It's very real. It's very down to earth. And Michael, it reminds me a lot of Michael Thomas back home. It's just that he's very real. He's very down to earth. He doesn't have to call himself a shaman. He doesn't have to do any of these things because it's authentic in what he does and how he does it. I'll let him explain more of that. We also have some great episodes where we'll be hanging out with some other alchemists from across the United States who want to dialogue and talk about what we're doing and things like that. So this is just the very first episode of Alchemical Journey TV. I know it's a week later than what we anticipated, but we're getting ready to move very, very quickly into offering a wide and very diverse set of programming. And so again, Michael, it's just like you said, if you're only interested in operative laboratory work, this is a great place for you. If you're only interested in just spiritual work, this is also a great place for you. If you're interested in out-of-the-box ways of thinking, this is also a great place for you. So Alchemical Journey is very broad and very diverse, and it will cater to a wide spectrum of people. And the one thing that you can count on Alchemical Journey doing is broadening your own spectrum of experience and getting you to think outside of the box, and hopefully helping you to embark upon an unprecedented journey of alchemical transformation.
Perfect. Well, Phoenix, I'd like to thank you for reviewing what you've been doing and taking the time for not just myself, but for all of our listeners to tell us what you're doing. I mean, there's so much information and knowledge packed in to what you said. I don't know how much of it went over people's heads because it's just so ripe with information. I know it sometimes even you don't realize it, because you've got so much knowledge. That was my first impression of you, is like, where the hell did this dude get all this information? And I've loved it, and I've loved going on that journey with you. And my mind has been opened, and I have gained a lot of knowledge. I have a long way to go. Not only a long way to go, because I really realize that there's no end to what we're doing here. We've got a long way to transform the world into the world that we want to see, and so I don't know if we'll be alive to make it well, obviously with transformation, it's not what we think it'll be. It's something completely new, and it always gets to surprise us, and that's what I like about it.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. Well, and thank you so much for that, Michael. I really appreciate that, and it's very humbling to hear that, because sometimes I really don't get caught up in that. I'm just so passionate about life and about alchemy and about experience that, and I have a mind like a steel trap too. So, yeah, and I'm so passionate. I never run out of things to say. So you're right. I don't realize. And if any of this went over your heads, please use the social networks. I will answer any honest and earnest question that there is. And I just want to remind everybody: there's no place for criticism on alchemiculture. There's only place for learning. There's only place for growth. So no matter where you're at, if you know nothing or if you know a lot, we will direct you towards resources or help or whatever that exists, or we will answer your questions ourselves, and we'll just take it from there. And we're just so glad to be able to offer this finally. It's been a dream, like what, Michael, 2 years in the making that we've been working on alchemiculture, and we're very, very honored to be able to bring it to everybody. So please make Alchemiculture yours, make Alchemical Journey TV yours, get interested, get participating, and yes, exactly. So, all right, well, thank you, Michael, man. Thank you so much for everything. I really appreciate you talking with me today, man.
All right, until next time.
All right, Phoenix Aurelius signing off from Tarapoto, Peru. Adiós y hasta luego.